The movie begins with a man named Vic Van Allen returning home from a cycling exercise. He finds his wife, Melinda, seated and smiling. Curious, Vic asks her what's wrong, but without saying a word, Melinda walks away. Later, the couple prepares to attend a party, leaving their daughter, Trixie, with a babysitter. Melinda asks Vic to choose the best outfit for her, and even helps her put on her shoes, highlighting how he follows his wife's requests. Upon arriving at the party, Vic and Melinda find many of their old friends. Melinda notices her old acquaintance, Joe, and immediately engages with him, while Vic watches curiously but chooses to remain silent. Melinda then takes Joe outside to have some private time. The two begin making out as Vic observes them through a window. Aware of his wife's infidelity, he quietly walks away. Vic's friend, Mary, approaches him and questions why he continues to hold on to such a broken relationship. In response, Vic explains that Melinda is free to do whatever she wants because he loves her deeply and does not want to break up their family. He believes that one day, she will recognize his love and change for the better. Despite everything, Vic smiles at her as if nothing has happened. Vic gets a drink from the counter and goes to relax. Joe approaches him and thanks him for allowing him to spend time with Melinda. In response, Vic asks Joe about a man named Martin McCrae, who recently went missing and was once a close friend of Melinda, just like Joe. Vic then suggests that he was responsible for Martin's disappearance. Joe takes it as a joke, but Vic assures him that if he continues making the same mistakes, he will make him disappear too. Frightened, Joe quickly leaves. Melinda notices Joe leaving the party early and tries to stop him, but Joe makes an excuse and exits. On the way home, Melinda asks Vic what he said to Joe that made him leave so suddenly. However, Vic denies saying anything that would have caused Joe to leave. Upon reaching home, while Vic is talking to their babysitter, Melinda walks into the kitchen topless. Vic confronts her, expressing his disappointment in her actions. The following day, Vic takes Trixie to school and runs into a friend who jokingly asks if he has started killing people, as rumors about his intimidation of Joe have been circulating among their friends. Later, Vic joins Miles and Tom for lunch. Tom admits that he could never kill someone just for sleeping with his wife and questions Vic about his threats toward Joe. Miles, on the other hand, advises Vic to find another woman who truly loves and respects him. Back home, Melinda scolds Vic for threatening Joe about Martin's disappearance, warning him that such things are not a joke. Vic acknowledges his mistake and apologizes, admitting that he realized it was a bad idea only after saying it. Melinda then tells him to apologize to Joe, whom she has invited for dinner on Friday, before he leaves on Saturday. The scene shifts to Vic welcoming Joe for dinner. Once inside, Joe excitedly shares that he has secured a well-paying job in New Mexico and will be leaving the next day. He mentions that he will be working in Albuquerque, which he says is quite different from the charming Santa Fe. Melinda encourages him to visit again in the future. Vic reminisces about the early days of his relationship with Melinda, telling Joe how he once took her to the best restaurant in the city, only for her to order mac and cheese. Melinda then accuses Vic of being ashamed of her, claiming that his refusal to drink sometimes makes her feel like he's not normal. Vic calmly responds that if he were normal, Joe wouldn't be enjoying dinner with them. Joe, feeling uneasy, quickly excuses himself. Later, as Vic reads a bedtime story to Trixie, she asks why her mother acts so differently around other people and confesses that she doesn't like Joe. After leaving Trixie's bedroom, Vic sees Melinda happily enjoying herself with Joe. She approaches Vic and tells him not to wash the dishes yet, saying he looks tired. Then, she pours more drinks for Joe and instructs Vic to take it to him. Joe confronts Vic, demanding an apology for suggesting that he killed Martin McCrae. However, Vic refuses to apologize and instead boldly confirms that he did kill Martin, striking him with a hammer. The following day, at a family day party, Vic meets Don Wilson, a screenwriter. He shares his passion for riding and mountain biking with Don, but Melinda interrupts, revealing the truth that Vic actually designs chips used in drones. Don criticizes him for creating technology that enables drones to target innocent people. The conversation then turns personal as Dawn directly accuses Vic of killing Martin McRae. Later, Vic surprises everyone, including Melinda, by asking Kelly to dance. On the way home, Melinda comments that he seemed to be having a lot of fun dancing with Kelly. She then pointedly asks if he ever thinks about being intimate with her, since she is attractive. Vic denies it, insisting that it wasn't the first thing on his mind. When they arrive home, the two become intimate. The following morning, while watching Trixie's football game, Vic receives a call from Whitmore Bank regarding Melinda's account, which has insufficient funds to cover a check she issued. The caller informs him that the check was made out to Mr. Charles Delisle for $3,000, supposedly for piano lessons. Later, Vic tracks down Charles Delisle and discovers that he is scheduled to perform live music that very night. He decides to attend the show, only to be surprised when Melinda arrives and waves at Charles. Frustrated, Vic leaves. Upon arriving home, he finds that Melinda has removed her wedding ring. At that moment, he learns that the police have discovered the body of Martin McRae, who had been missing. Melinda arrives home, excitedly sharing that she had a wonderful dinner with her new friend, Charles. Vic then informs her that the police have found Martin McRae's body, which suddenly dampens her mood. Later that evening, feeling jealous, Vic throws away the flowers that Charles had gifted Melinda. The following night, Vic attends Charles Delisle's show and casually reveals to Grant that Charles has been giving Melinda piano lessons. While tending to his snail garden, Vic reminisces about an intimate moment he once shared with Melinda in the car. The next morning, he confronts Melinda, asking why she didn't come home the previous night and questioning her about the $3,000 check she wrote to Charles Delisle. However, Melinda refuses to give him any answers and instead accuses him of being jealous. Melinda confesses of being in love with Charles. Vic tells her to stop seeing him and have more time for her family. Melinda refuses, claiming that it was Vic's decision to allow her behave that way. The next morning, while enjoying the party, Charles visits Melinda. Later in the house, Melinda introduces him to everyone. Charles then plays a song, making Melinda so excited and dancing wild. Melinda then introduces Charles to Vic Allen. Vic thanks him for giving piano lessons to his wife. As the day gets dark, Vic starts looking for Melinda. Mary tells him that Melinda is upstairs with Charles. As Melinda swims in the pool with Charles, Vic stares them with jealousy and burning anger. As the rain starts pouring, everyone rushes inside, but Vic remains by the pool with Charles. Mary approaches Vic, expressing her surprise at seeing him dance with Kelly earlier. Meanwhile, as Melinda looks around for Charles, Melinda suddenly discovers Charlie's body floating in the pool. Panicked, she calls for help, and they rush to his aid. Vic performs CPR on him in an attempt to revive him. The police soon arrive at the scene and begin questioning everyone about how Charles was pulled from the pool. Grant then reveals that he and Vic were the last ones to leave the area. Suddenly, Melinda accuses Vic of killing Charles, insisting to the police that he must have hit him over the head and drowned him. She repeatedly blames Vic for Charlie's death. Vic defends himself, arguing that Melinda is simply upset about losing yet another boyfriend. Wilson eyes Vic with suspicion, sensing there might be more to the story. Jonas then tells the police that Charles likely hit his head against the edge of the pool while they were lifting him out. Chief Nichols requests to speak with Vic privately. During the investigation, Vic is questioned about whether his wife had slept with Charles Delisle and why she is now accusing him of murder. Vic claims he doesn't know, insisting that Melinda is often irrational. He firmly denies any involvement in Charles's death. He then proceeds to explain to Chief Nichols exactly how the events unfolded. Back home, Vic asks Melinda if she wants a divorce. He then questions her. If she truly believes he killed Charles, why isn't she afraid of him? That evening, as Vic cycles around the city, he reflects on how he actually ended Charles's life by drowning him in the pool. At Trixie's school, Kelly informs Vic that her husband, Don, has been constantly inviting Melinda over and discussing Charles's death, implying that Vic was responsible. Vic reassures Kelly that it's not her fault and invites her and Don over for dinner. Vic takes Don to his snail garden and urges him to stop spreading rumors that he killed Charles Delisle, warning that it is damaging Kelly's reputation. Don then asks Vic what he thinks really happened to Charles. Vic responds that it was likely an accident, just like the thousands of accidental drownings that happen in pools every year. Don then questions Vic about Martin McRae, asking if he truly believes Vic was responsible for his death. Vic strongly denies any involvement. The scene shifts to Vic visiting Don's house, where he asks about a man named David, whom he had seen with Melinda at a restaurant. Vic reveals to Kelly that Don had hired a private investigator named David to follow him. He then shows her proof of money transfers, $743 paid by Don to Melinda for the investigator services. On his way back, Vic spots Melinda walking down the street with another man. The following morning, Melinda's new friend, Tony Cameron, visits Vic in his snail garden. Vic learns that Tony is a real estate agent. Shortly after, Melinda arrives and greets Tony with a warm hug. Tony shares that he and Melinda first connected on Facebook. He then expresses interest in trying some of Vic's snails. However, Vic warns him that snails should only be eaten on an empty stomach. Otherwise, he might end up poisoning himself. Later, as Vic cleans the tables, he watches Melinda dancing with Tony. That very night, Melinda becomes intimate with Tony, completely disregarding Vic's presence. The next morning, Vic encounters Tony on his way to visit Melinda and offers him a ride. During the drive, Tony casually mentions that he used to go hiking with Melinda when they first started dating. Feeling provoked by Tony's stories, Vic accelerates the car, driving him deep into the forest. Along the way, he learns that Tony and Melinda reconnected months ago. Growing suspicious, Tony asks to call Melinda, but when he checks his phone, he realizes there's no service. As the car comes to a stop, Vic suddenly strikes Tony with a rock, leaving him dazed. Seizing the moment, he picks up a larger rock and delivers a final blow, sending Tony tumbling down the gorge, where he fatally crashes his head. Vic then drags Tony's body, ties a rock to it, and dumps it into the water stream to ensure it sinks. When he arrives home, he finds Melinda laughing with Trixie. Casually, he asks her about Tony, to which she responds that she hasn't heard from him. She then asks Vic if he has seen Tony, but he calmly denies it. Later, Trixie excitedly tells Vic that they're planning a picnic at the gorge. At the gorge, as they take in the surroundings, Melinda turns to Vic and asks why he is the only man who insists on staying with her. Vic then presents Melinda with a photo magazine he made just for her. As he walks toward the edge of the gorge to check on Trixie, he suddenly notices Charles's corpse floating in the water. On their way back home, Melinda realizes she left her scarf at the gorge. Vic reassures her that he will return in the morning to retrieve it. That night, Melinda asks Vic to stay with her in bed, and the two become intimate. As morning arrives, Vic cycles back to the gorge to retrieve Melinda's scarf. Meanwhile, back home, Melinda wanders into Vic's snail garden, where she stumbles upon Tony's wallet. Suspicious, she begins to suspect that Vic may have done something terrible to him. At the gorge, Vic rushes to the stream, grabbing a log to push Tony's corpse back to the bottom of the water. As he struggles, he remains unaware that someone is watching him from a distance. Moments later, Don emerges, holding Melinda's scarf. He questions Vic about what he is doing in the water. Thinking quickly, Vic replies that Melinda left her scarf behind, and that's what he was looking for. Don moves closer to the stream, questioning Vic about what he is doing with the stick. Suddenly, Tony's corpse resurfaces. Realizing what he has just seen, Don panics and runs for his life, with Vic quickly chasing after him. Don jumps into his car and speeds away, but Vic, determined to stop him, gives chase on his bicycle, cutting through the forest and maneuvering skillfully to keep up. Back home, a terrified Melinda hurriedly packs her belongings, preparing to leave Vic. However, Trixie, refusing to abandon their home, grabs the luggage and throws it into the pool, defiantly telling her mother that they are not going anywhere. As the chase continues, Don reaches for his phone to call Kelly, but before he can make the call, he loses control of his car and crashes, going down the gorge. Vic cycles back home, and the scene transitions to the exact moment where the movie began. Melinda seated at the staircase, smiling at him. The film ends with Melinda burning all the remaining evidence of Tony's existence. Thanks for watching. Check back for the next recap.